this morning's session is labeled 4 Ways to Improve Your Dynamics GP Payroll Experience. And we have Dan Dooling from Integrity Data who's going to be handling this session. He's going to walk us through the entire experience that he's going to show us. And at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheridan. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a great Tuesday morning. What we're going to do, as Sheridan mentioned, is talk about 4 ways to improve your payroll experience in Dynamics GP. So I want to talk about 4 situations that come up frequently in Dynamics GP, and we're going to talk about 4 ways to get around those situations that come up in Dynamics GP. All in all, to help you improve your efficiency and processing capabilities within Dynamics GP and maybe get you back some of that time in your day as well. The way that we're going to do this, I want to walk through some information in PowerPoint with our good friend the dog here on the beach, and then we're also going to get into Dynamics GP as well and show you how to do those things directly within Dynamics GP. That way, if you want to utilize the screenshots from the PowerPoint afterwards, you'll have that information. All right, let me give you just a little bit of information about Integrity Data just so you have a little bit of understanding of my background. I've been working with Dynamics GP for 17 years, and as an organization, we've been working with Dynamics GP for 20 years plus. We've worked in the area a lot with payroll with Dynamics GP, helping deliver some key features with Microsoft. And so this is really what we've spent a lot of our time doing in the last 20 years, is working in the area of payroll. And what we like to do is just help customers that are using payroll have a better experience. And we also like to learn from customers that are using payroll, and so that we can help improve that experience that you're having. All right, so let's jump right into it. Let's start with the first one. And the first area that we want to talk about that can always use improvement, and this is really a pretty popular area, and we've titled it just payroll corrections. Okay, so payroll corrections can happen for a lot of different reasons. When we're going to focus on is a situation where employees enter their time incorrectly. So maybe their time is recorded in the wrong department, a wrong part of your organization, the wrong position. They recorded it to the wrong pay code. Maybe the employee had vacation or sick time that they recorded and didn't take, or probably more likely, they took time off but didn't record it. And so what that causes you to have to do is go in and make a correction or make an adjustment to those payroll timesheet entries so that everything else is correct, so that your hourly reports are correct, departmental reports are correct, financial reports as they get posted over to the general ledger are correct. Those are all very important things. And so you could do payroll corrections in Dynamics GP today. The problem is that it takes a long time, and you've got to use the manual check window, which really nobody's a really big fan of having to use that. So that can take some time. It can be a little bit prone to mistakes. And so one way to improve that experience is to use a little piece called negative payroll transactions. Okay, so what this does is helps you to be able to do that in one quick step on payroll transaction entry. So let me just show you an example in a screenshot here while we're talking about it. Now you'll see over on the right-hand side, you'll see that third transaction there. It's highlighted. It's got a -8 hours there. So what you're able to do with that is to say, okay, this employee recorded vacation or had vacation on their time card, but they didn't take it, or had time recorded at the wrong department. And so what you're able to do is back that out the next pay period using a negative payroll transaction. Now that's something you can't do in core Dynamics GP, which is why this feature is available. It really helps save a lot of time. It saves you from having to use that manual check window. We're able to do these very quickly. It posts through and makes adjustments to the financial posting as well. So at the end of the day, instead of spending 18 steps trying to fix a correction or an adjustment, you're able to do it in one step. And that's the first way to improve your payroll experience in Dynamics GP. Okay, and then that's referred to as a negative payroll transaction. All right, the next situation that comes up is similar, but a little bit more complicated, and that's a negative deduction. Okay, so processing negative deductions, or deduction refunds as we call them, happens because of a couple situations that come up. You know, the employee submitted an expense report, so there's no wages, you need to do a negative deduction. Is one scenario. The second scenario, which we see a lot, is that the wrong deduction code was created or assigned to the employee, so they had deductions withheld that were incorrect. They need to refund those back to the employee and then perform the correct deduction or assign the correct deduction. The other thing that we see is a health insurance benefit or other benefit has been deducted, and then the employee terminates. You need to refund part of that deduction. And again, these situations can be handled in Dynamics GP, but again, it's a time-consuming process. It's a little bit cumbersome, and this one in particular is easy to make a mistake with. And the customers that I've talked to, like, well, we can do it, but we mess it up a fair amount. And so what you can do is you can use a tool called negative deductions, and what that will do is get that negative deduction process down to one step. Negative deductions are a little bit complicated because as you go through the process, it's really a two-step process. One is getting the money back to the employee, and then two is correcting the records in the system. Okay, so those are the two steps. And again, you can do that in Dynamics GP using, typically it's used a different type of pay code to refund the money, and then again use that manual check window to refund the deduction to the employee. Again, it's a little bit complicated, and what we've done to help improve that experience is, again, turn it into a one-step process. Here on the transaction entry window, you see the screenshot just down from our negative payroll transaction. You'll notice that we have a deduction record in the payroll transaction entry window, and this is not a quote-unquote transaction required deduction. This is an automatic deduction, and this feature enables us to do that. And so what we're able to do is enter the negative deduction amount. That will do two things. One is that it will create the transaction and will transfer this transaction to a pay code that is configured and is in line with the taxing requirements related to this deduction, give the employee that money back, and then it will automatically create those manual transactions that we talked about on the back side and post those. So what it does is it takes a lot of that guesswork and area that has a high potential for mistakes out of the equation and just lets you enter it in one step, and it'll take care of everything else behind the scenes. Again, improving that payroll experience, taking it from a 20-minute process that might have mistakes to a 30-second process. Again, greatly improving your payroll experience. Now, if you don't have to deal with this very often, then maybe you're okay doing the manual process and it takes a little bit longer. If you have any volume of these, then certainly an improvement in that process is going to help streamline and improve that experience many times over. All right. This is our most popular request that we get, where Dynamics GP customers are trying to improve their process and experience, and that is the area of distribution of earning statements. In most cases now, a lot of employees are on direct deposit, at least the majority of employees, and so their pay is going through the bank. You don't have to give them a check, but a lot of organizations are still giving that manual check stub, okay, or earning statement. And so they're looking for ways to make that electronic. Couple of methodologies for doing that. One is to have some kind of an employee self-service portal. The second is to distribute those earning statements via email. Okay, so if you're, as I always say as a joke, if you're the person that has to lick all the envelopes for those earning statements, you're probably looking for a better experience. If you're looking to reduce the amount of paper you're using, just time, if you are having to mail those out externally or have somebody hand them out, that all takes time. So a lot of employers are really trying to figure out a way to get those earning statements to employees quickly, inexpensively, and electronically. Okay. So to do that, to improve that experience, there's a tool called Employee Email Suite, and what that will do is let you email earning statements, direct deposit earning statements, directly out of Dynamics GP and directly to the employee's email address, whether that's a home email address or a work email address or both. If you're in the United States, you can also use that to email W-2s and 1095-C forms for Affordable Care Act compliance. The earning statement gets sent as a password-protected PDF attachment, and you can also attach other documents as well. So let's take a look at a couple of screenshots related to that. So once you're done processing payroll in Dynamics GP, rather than having to print all those earning statements, fold them, put them in an envelope. I may have lost everyone. Sheridan or Yenny, can you confirm that we're still connected?
Yes, we are. At least I'm still hearing you.
Okay. We're having a really bad thunderstorm here and the power just went out, but it looks like we're able to stay connected. Okay, good. Yeah. I'll keep going. So once you process that payroll in Dynamics GP, rather than having to go print the earning statements, put them in an envelope, have somebody hand them out, or in some cases here in the United States, they'll mail those, which gets more and more expensive every year. They'll come into this that you see on the screen, select the pay run, mark all the employees. It knows who's going to get those earning statements emailed to them. Those are employees that are active on direct deposit and have an email address in Dynamics GP. And it's okay to have some employees that still get it printed, because not all employees have an email, and in some cases employees might have an email but don't want to get their earning statement that way. And you can have exceptions. So we'll just show the employees are going to get emailed. You mark, hit process, and it's its way. And behind there, you'll see that it'll send about 70 emails per minute, though it's pretty quick. It's faster than the printer, as I like to say. Let's look at a couple other screenshots. Here's the email that the employee would get. Here's the attachment. So the employee would enter a secure password. It's probably going to be like the last 4 digits of their tax ID number. So that's a pretty common approach. You can also use some custom passwords also. So there's a direct deposit earning statement right out of Dynamics GP. Now you'll also notice at the top in the attachments there's a company picnic announcement, which is the same announcement or same additional document going to every employee. But then you'll also see an employee specific document, which is something that's just for that employee and only sent to that employee. And so you can use this for a lot of additional components and to add additional value and to improve your experience beyond just sending the earning statement. Okay. Very popular, very handy. This is popular throughout the United States, Bermuda, Caribbean. It's a great tool. All right, now this is sort of the big one of the group that we're talking about today. And one area that's really, this is where, I don't know, myself as a consultant and helping employers, this is, I guess, sort of where I always end up a lot of times, is working and helping employers with leave management. And this is an area that is very important, because when you think about, as me as an employee, when I look at my check stub or my earning statement, I look at the net pay and I look at how much vacation or PTO or sick time that I have, okay? Because those are two things that are very important to every employee. And so managing leave is important for all organizations, whether it's vacation time, sick time. In some cases there is legislatively mandated sick time by the government, so we've got to deal with that, and that's very important. But employees, it's very important to employees, and when it's very important to employees, they ask a lot of questions like, gee, why is my balance this low? And a lot of employers are still managing that process outside of Dynamics GP, which hinders their ability to quickly and effectively answer those questions. Okay, so let's take a look at some capabilities that will help with that experience around leave management. All right, so we'll talk about the ability to have an unlimited user-defined types of leave in addition to just vacation and sick time. Different types of accruals and rules, and we'll look at some of these. Lump sum, comp time, accruals, accrue leave during payroll or at some other interval, detailed transaction history to answer that question of, gee, why is my balance only 10 hours of vacation time left? Help that payroll person quickly answer those questions. Easily run reports. And also, if you're using the Dynamics GP web client self-service, there's some things there for employees and managers to be able to do as well. Take a look at some quick screenshots. We'll go through this in a little bit of our demonstration as well. So setting up the leave code, you'll see all the different options. We'll talk more about this in the demonstration. This is really so it's into the PowerPoint if you want to access that. Setting up different calculations for the accrual for the employees, whether it's per hour or per pay period or per year, and maximums and so on. Being able to get a glance at the employees' balances. What are their different leave plans in which they're enrolled? How much have they earned, taken? What's their remaining balance? And then ever important transaction history. This is important because when employees come to you with a question, say, why is my balance only 23.68? And you don't have a good way to show them how you got to that balance, they get suspicious and they're going to ask a lot more questions. Okay, when an employee comes to you and says, why is my balance only 23.68, and you're able to print this for them and show them the detailed history, that increases their confidence in you having a good understanding of what their balance is. In addition, it's also nice to have this updated information on the pay stubs. So that information is very important to employees to see that detailed information. You've got a lot of options for doing that. All right, let's switch over to Dynamics GP and let's take a look at some of these in action here. Okay, so let's take a look first at payroll transaction entry. I've got to pull up a payroll batch here. Okay, I've got the kind of the standard here. Now let's say that we want to do a transaction here for a negative number of hours. We need to do a correction or adjustment. We'll use the same example we saw in the screenshot. So I'm going to put in PTO time. Okay, I'm going to put in I'm going to back out some PTO time, so I'm going to put in -8 hours. Okay, and all I did there was hit the minus sign and then the 8, and we've got our correction already in place. We could do that a little bit differently also, just to use another example. If we did it for the hourly pay code, but what we're doing here is maybe saying that we're taking hours from a different department. Okay, so instead of the installation department, we're going to take 8 hours from the sales department. And I didn't type that correctly. Okay, so you can make those types of adjustments also. So it's not just PTO, but you can make sure that, and the reason that you would do this is to make sure that the cost associated with that time is allocated to the correct department. Okay, and that's obviously very important when you get into financial reporting, department managers looking at their budgets and not being overcharged for people's time that wasn't working in their department. So that's very important, very helpful, very handy to be able to make those adjustments very quickly and very easily. Now, while we're here, let's do the same thing, but with a negative deduction. I'm going to show you how easy that process. So instead of a pay code, I'm going to choose a deduction code. Okay, I'm going to say insurance. It knows that insurance deduction is not a transaction required deduction. So when it sees that, it's going to say, oh, okay, you must want to create a negative deduction transaction. Okay, which means we're going to refund money to the employee. I hit continue. It defaults to $12.50, which is the per pay period amount for this employee. And you can change this if you want, if you need to prorate it or do something like that, $10. Now you'll notice what happens is there's an additional screen that pops up. Okay, so this screen is what we call the mapping, which is temporarily translating that amount to a pay code. Okay, and the reason that it has to do that is because it needs to pay that $10 back to the employee. So this was predefined in the setup. So what's important about this, especially here in the US with taxing, is that this is a pre-tax deduction. This is a taxable pay code, and that's probably the most important part of the setup, is to make sure that you get that right. So we can map to the pay code. So when we run through the payroll, you will see $10 get paid to this employee under this pay code, and then that automatic manual adjustment process behind the scenes will back that out, and as well as backing out that actual deduction code also. Okay, taking a lot of manual complicated steps and automating them for you, and that will improve your payroll experience. Okay. Right, so now when you're done processing payroll, we'll come into the to email the earning statements. And you saw the screenshot of this. I don't have a lot to add in the demo because it's really just going in and saying, hey, I want to email these. Okay, select the pay run. Okay, in this pay run, I only had one employee. Mark that employee or mark all, hit process, then it emails out the earning statements to the employees. There's a lot of options for doing this. You can archive the earning statements as PDFs and they're password protected, and you can send the other documents and so on. So there's a lot of additional features to this. This is where the big benefit is for you and saving you time, is just emailing those earning statements, just being done with it. I mean, just the fact that if today you're spending a couple of hours or several hours per pay period printing those out and getting them to the employees, and you can come in here and push a couple of buttons and be done, that's a big thumbs up for saving yourself some time, and you know, maybe go home early on Friday or do something, do more, or get to some of those things that you've been meaning to get to. It'll save you some time. All right, let's take a look at leave management, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. Let's go into this leave setup. Now this is where you define the leave plans that you're offering for the employees. Now you can see here that I've got a lot of different plans set up. You can track as many as you need, but let's look at PTO. I like to look at the PTO plan just because it's kind of generic. Some of these others are a little bit more specific to some customers we've been working with. But let's look at this. So I've got the description, the code and the description, okay, just like everything else in Dynamics GP. I can make this description be whatever I want. So if it's specific plan for a specific group of employees, I can put that in here. And then what's nice about that is I can have that show up on the check stub or the earning statement for the employee also. So they know exactly where that time's coming from. The leave type, we mentioned the accrual, the lump sum, as well as the comp time. The accrual schedule. The accrual schedule is where all the fun really happens, and that's really the heart of determining how much time that employee is going to get, whether that's per year, per pay period, per month, anything like that, and that's in the accrual schedule. You saw a screenshot of this, but I want to show you a few more options and talk a little bit about how this works. So you've got data criteria that we call ranges, and a very common range or data criteria for determining how much time an employee earns is their years of service. So I've got that selected here for range 1, years worked. Now, in addition, you've also got all these other options. So hours worked in the calendar year, hours worked life to date at your company, years worked, for every X hours per calendar year. We see that used a lot. For every 30 hours that an employee works, give them 1 hour of sick time as a common example, and so on. And so if you've got multiple criteria in your rules, you can use range 2, and you can set up a whole additional rule as well. So you can have multiple rules, multiple criteria in each rule. You can have all kinds of fun with this. So years worked is a criteria. You will see that represented below. We've got our first maximum here, which is per pay period. So the way that this works below is that for employees with less than 5 years of service, they're gonna, if they work full time, they'll earn 3.08 hours per pay period, which translates into 80 hours per year. Now this one's also set up to prorate. So if the employee works 80 hours, it'll take those 80 hours times this number, this calculation factor, that gets 3.08. If the employee works 60 hours, it takes 60 times 0.0385, which is somewhere a little bit less than 3.08. So it automatically prorates how much time the employee earns based on the hours that they worked in that pay period or that period of time. This is just one example. It's a very common example, but this is all automated during payroll processing. So you don't have to mess with it. You assign it to the employees, forget about it. It will do its thing whenever you're processing payroll. And this is just one example. If you don't want to prorate, you don't have to. There's a lot of ways to configure this. But what it will do is automatically determine how long the employee's been there, assign the right calculation factor, do the accrual, check their maximums, and be on its way. A lot of great things that you can do with this accrual schedule. Okay. Now, once you've got that set, you can do a waiting period, which is, hey, the employee is accruing, but they can't use it for 90 days, as an example. Set a cap on the employee's balance, which is at any time they will never go over 200 hours in their balance, for example. So the system will shut off for them and start back up if they use some of that time. Now, the earned pay codes are hours that go into that accrual calculation, if it's based on the hours worked. Over on the right-hand side, you've got what we call carryover. That's really an annual check on the balance. So a carryover, a use it or lose it, a rollover, all the same thing. But just to say, hey, at the end of the year, this employee can't take more than 160 hours into the next year. And if they have more than that, they're going to lose it. Okay. And again, that can be a purely automated function. And then what's also nice is that the take and pay code is what's used to indicate in payroll transaction entry that the employee took some time off, and will automatically deplete their balance. And that updated balance or time taken will be reflected on the employee's pay stub as well. So very important, very automated. So you set this up, you assign it to the employee. There's a couple of different ways to do that. We'll look at an employee example. Okay, here's our employee, Adam Barr. Okay, his current balance, 3.68 hours. He might be one of those people calling in to ask a question. Why is my balance only 3.68? He can't even take Friday afternoon off. So, but you see here that what you can do also is that you can make some tweaks per employee. So all the defaults come in from the setup, but you can make some adjustments at the employee level as well. Now, some other things you can do. I'm going to navigate a couple different ways here. If you're at this window, you can go to the leave summary, leave transactions from employee maintenance. Okay, you can also go to payroll, leave codes, which is where we're at, leave summary, or leave transactions. Okay, so you can navigate several different ways. You can also navigate from the menu at the top also. Okay, so let's go to leave summary. So here you see all the balances for this employee. Okay, all the different, how much they've earned, how much they've taken, any adjustments that have been made, the remaining balance, which is their available balance. You can set this to be over the current calendar year, etc. Now, if you want to get into more detail, so when this employee calls and says, why is my balance only 3.68 hours? Double click, You can also go into leave transactions. Here's that detailed transaction history. Okay, very similar to the screenshot we saw. You can print this for the employee. Print it to a file and send it to them, print it to the screen, send it to them. But that's that detailed history. This is important, because if you're currently tracking in Excel, then when that employee calls, you might have to say, you know what, I'm gonna have to look into that and I'll call you back. And you may not have a good audit trail of that employee's balance versus just saying, here is everything that's impacted your balance, and send it to them or print it out and hand it to them. Then they will look at you and say, wow, you've really got a pretty good handle on this, don't you? I guess it's right. So that will slow down the inquiries. Again, that in and of itself, the reduced number of inquiries from employees is going to improve your payroll experience. Now, there's always so this is what you should be able to do with this is almost purely automate the process of leave management. So accruals, when employees take time, etc. There's always exceptions, okay? And those exceptions are handled and create the transactions. And you'll see that in my history here, where I've got some transfers, some payouts, some adjustments, and that's all controlled by you, and it's all tracked. So you can do the adjustments, you can pay out if employees terminate. Everything that you need to do is accommodated here. Very important process for employees, but very important for you to be able to do it effectively and efficiently. And it's a great way, and it's a big area where you can improve your payroll experience in Dynamics GP. So those are the 4 areas that we wanted to talk about. We talked about corrections and adjustments and doing those negative payroll transactions. We talked about having to refund deductions to employees and give that money back to the employee, or correct that deduction through a refund. We talked about the quick way to do that. We talked about the issue of having to print earning statements and manually distribute those to the employees. And we talked about the way to improve that, which is by emailing those earning statements to the employees. Your other option there that we don't currently provide is having an online website or a portal, employee portal for employees to go to. And that works fine. That's really a preference on your part as far as which way you'd like to go with that. Sometimes the portal is a little bit more complicated because you've got to help employees maintain usernames and passwords and that sort of thing. So those are your options there. And then leave management. There are some great ways to track leave in Dynamics GP. In addition, this additional component that we looked at today is a little bit more comprehensive, has a little bit more detail to it, help you answer those employee questions a little bit more quickly, and ultimately will help you improve that payroll experience. All right, let's go back and go to the PowerPoint slide. Those are 4 ways to improve your payroll experience. At this point, I don't know if there's any questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have related to those 4 topics, or really, I guess, some other topics that might come up from a payroll perspective. We're going to end a little bit early today, which is probably a good thing. So you're already improving your webinar experience and giving you a little bit of your time back today. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that come up, if there are any.